Hello, I'm Cat, and recently I've been making lots of coloured blocks, glass, wool and concrete, and so I need to die. But since suicide is illegal, at least in these countries, instead I'm going to play Minecraft and get my hands on all of the colours while bringing you along so that we can make a guide on how to get an infinite amount off each dye or colour, or what you might call a renewable amount, because honestly, I'm going to save your time and make sure that I show that I value it and front load the video of the fact that bone meal is the secret. If you have any too high flour and you bone meal it, you will get an instant copy of that flour, which can be turned into, in this case, 2 red dye. The same is true for the peonies, and the same is true for the other fun flower, the lilac, which means you can instantly get dye by using bone meal, and that is true for Bedrock and Java. But if you're a Bedrock player, you might not be taking advantage of what is perhaps the best Bedrock exclusive, the ability to also bone meal regular flowers and not just get 1 copy, indeed that's kind of nice, but instead for every 1 bone meal you use, you'll get 1, 2, 3 or 4. On a bad bone meal, and on a good bone meal, you might end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 light blue dye for the price of 1. This means that it's incredibly lucrative to just have a large supply of bone meal, but which dyes can you get from flowers? Which ones can you not? And how do you get your hands on all of them? Well, that's what I want to go into today, because this is my Let's Play, a world I've been playing on since 2012 now, and a part of having a long-term world is kind of knowing when you need to evolve and upgrade, and so I've had this hill right here. It's my hill that I've been doing dye stuff for, and it's been pretty fine because I don't really do that many colourful things, but recently, while working on the metro map, or the physical metro that it's meant to represent, as you can see, nice bright colours, I've come to realise I need a lot more dye than I've previously been using, and so having a big blue shulker box that has all of the colours in is functional and technically works, but it'd be better if I took this hill, which I've already been using for dye and dye related things for a while now, and I take this hill that I've already wanted to dye on, and I turn it into a hill that I can dye on. And, you know, if you want to know a hill I would die on, it's the fact that subscribing to channels you like is actually a really good idea, but I want to give you a guide on how to get all of the colours here, and so let's get started with something that is going to be important, because I brought lots of colours along with me, right? I brought red, and I brought orange, and all of the other colours in the rainbow, which I'll have to remind myself by singing the song. It's Richard of York gave... battle in vain, fun fact. But the fun thing about this is I'm going to build a little structure out of these, and obviously if I want to make myself a light blue block to show indigo, that's going to be some light blue dye, and that's going to be a white wool. But how would I get my hands on a purple block? If you have played Minecraft for not that long, you might not realise that there are some colours that you can make in weird ways, and if you played Minecraft for a really long time, you might not realise that there's a different ways to get items than what you're previously used to. For example, back when I started playing Minecraft, blue wool meant you had blue dye, and nowadays it means you have cornflowers, which do spawn naturally in meadows and in the plains biome if I'm not mistaken, but you can use my handy little tip from earlier if you want to, where you take some of this and you put it in a hole, and all of a sudden we can get, instead of having to mine for our lapis and hopefully find a bunch of it, even though it's just as rare as diamonds, now we can get a bunch of blue dye from it, which is handy because I already have red dye, and you can take both of these and combine them in a crafting table to get purple dye. This will be handy for part 2 of my grand plan, which is obviously to make a big house to actually store all the dye in, but I think part 1 should be about how exactly you can get all the dyes and some of the weird combinations you need to make. You see, this is the master plan for dyes that you can mix in Minecraft, and so take the primary colours for example, you can mix blue and red to get purple, you can mix red and yellow to get orange, but what do you think happens when you mix blue and yellow together? One of the weird parts of Minecraft is that is not possible. So that is why you need to know this chart, at least loosely, and then you can know exactly which dyes you can combine, and therefore which dyes you're not going to be able to find, even if you get the flowers for them, because I have gone and placed the flowers. But that might not help me realise that if I want to get my hands on a blue orchid, but cannot for whatever reason, it's a fairly rare flower, then all I would actually have to do is find some cornflowers. Pro tip, you don't need to use lapis. This is something a surprising number of people don't know, because cornflowers are a fairly small addition and you might miss them, but this is something that old Minecrafters would have dreamt of, and it exists right here in modern Minecraft, a way to get a bunch of blue dye, but then combine that with white dye, or if you're playing Bedrock, fun fact, you can mix it with bone meal directly to get light blue dye, instead of having to use the light blue dye specific block. Indeed, the same thing can be done with closed eye blossoms, a much newer addition. Instead of having to get grey grey dye by mixing white and black together. Instead, you can simply grab a ton of these, like I already have, and get some regular old grey dye. Now, the thing that will drive me crazy here is not only that there's no green flour that you can get, okay, that's fine, I guess, makes sense, but also that there's not actually a white flour that I have, because I thought, you know, forever I've assumed, like, well, I have white tulips, so I should have access to white dye, but here's a fun fact: white tulips and the Oxeye Daisy and Azure Bluet, despite all being incredibly white, all give you light grey dye, and there is one white flower that exists in Minecraft, but I do not have a Lily of the Valley anywhere in my world that I could find. I did some extensive looking around just to make sure I hadn't missed it in a chest, but nope, no white dye anywhere in my world, and so it's worth looking around to see what you can find, what you can easily get your hands on, and what you can easily just craft instead. And sadly, white dye is something I'm probably going to use bone meal for until I can get my hands on that. But again, you can work out the crafting recipes for any of this, but it means that the things like the brown dye, where there's no brown flour, and the green, and the things that are based on those, instead of being able to have a flower in these holes that I'll be bone milling, instead I'll simply have a chest for those colors. So here is my chest in my very messy inventory. Let's go ahead and place the chest right down here in front of the flowers, and we're going to fill this chest with a bunch of the different dyes. Actually, wait, no, let's make sure this is nice and organized. If we've got 16 colors, because fun fact, there are 16 dyes, we can have the 16 dyes all take up a 4x4 grid, and so we'll just have nice, easy slots where the green dye and the light green dye, and fun fact, because you need green to make cyan, the cyan dye, although we can put that up a block, this is where those blocks will go, I guess. That then just leaves us needing to find space for the brown dye, which, fun fact, is just cocoa beans. This is messy by comparison to farm, but there's brown dye nonetheless. And then we're obviously going to need purple dye, which, again, no purple flower. So we take some blue dye, and we take some, you know, in this case, poppies, and those are the two types of dye. Obviously, I think most of the time I would still use my roses, but still, we can place our poppy, which I've just grabbed, into this hole here, and probably remove that, and probably even go a step further here, and just make it less likely that the grass or the flowers spread down there, if I can avoid it. Boom, easy peasy. Okay, so that is the red flower, and then that means that the combination of both of these dyes will have to just be a single chest filled with that dye. And then also there is white dye, which I don't have a flower for yet, but later it can go right here. For now, we'll memorialize where it should be by placing ourselves a block, just like if it were a flower over here. And again, we can enjoy imagining what it would be like to have a white flower, but instead have a chest full of it. And then there is also black dye, which goes over here, making, I believe, the full 16. We have 16 chests, so either I miscounted or double counted, but as you can see, I now have the laziest version of 16 dyes that I can go and get at any point. Well, I mean, I don't, because this chest is empty. Pro tip, I would actually recommend this. This is one of those, like, early to mid-game, or if you just like being strange like me. It's a weird thing to say, but sometimes it is fun just to do things that are slightly different to the norm. Sometimes it is fun, you know, like to set up a cactus auto farm, not because you necessarily want it yourself, but because you think it's a fun source of XP, and XP farms are boring. Because XP farms are one of the dullest parts of Minecraft. You literally sit there AFK, but I have this mini cactus farm, and a much bigger one, which feed cactus into this furnace, and that furnace gives me green dye. In fact, wait, have I only got one set of green dye in here? Where'd I move the rest of the green dye to? Anyway, so that's my green dye sorted. As far as where my black dye comes from, now I have this funny thing of ink sacks that don't entirely stack, and I could theoretically take half of each of these, and get this, I imagine one of the easy solutions to these stacks not coming together. Yes, this is ridiculous, and Bedrock has funny problems. I bet that they would stack if I turn them both into black dye, and damn it, I always think I've outsmarted Bedrock, but it's always Bedrock that outsmarts me. Anyway, so in theory I could get past it that way, but actually most of my black dye is going to come from a slightly more renewable source, because I plan to use wither flowers. If you've never tried this before, fun fact, you can actually get black dye from not squid ink. Again, it's existed for a while, but many people don't know about it. This is a wither rose. You get it from when the wither kills any mob, but especially it likes to shoot friendly mobs. Get the wither to kill some mobs, and every time it does, it will drop a wither rose. So to show that this is the black chest, I'll put that next to it. and here goes my black die. To show this is the green chest, well, obviously, half of this is going to need to be white, and then half of it's going to be green, and then, I guess we'll put this in the bottom right to show that that's what it is, and then lime dye can go in here. Green dye, on the other hand, goes in here, and that just leaves us with cyan, which weirdly enough, you can also technically farm using the pitcher flower. But again, the pitcher flower is a bit of a weird one because unlike how most things and you would expect work, you can't, even though they're a 2-high flower like those, you can't bone meal them to get more of them. So I should place a pitcher flower here just to be clear, but this is still going to be my cyan dye chest. But now, theoretically, wait, what was this chest again? This is purple. So we'll make a bunch of purple, easy peasy. There is some, I've got a bunch of cornflowers sitting around from here, as well as far too many rose bushes for anyone's good. So now here's the fun thing, right? I have got all of these chests laid out, which in theory means I can make all the dyes that I want to off any type. But to actually prove that that is more than just a concept, what is going here? Oh, it's white dye. So just, again, keep things simple. Stack of bones makes 3 stacks of bone meals, makes 2 stacks of white dye, makes a happy version of me. Anyway, so now that we've gotten our big set, we've gotten everything done besides getting that white flower, we should be able to, in theory, get any dye on demand. And so to prove that, I'm going to be making a house to sit on this hill. Because again, I think it's important to dye on a hill sometimes. I actually think it's important not to dye on a hill unless it's really important. But here's a really important idea. What if we made a rainbow house that then featured each of the 16 colors in the roof? Because we can do that. Well, let's get going. So this was the basic idea, to make a super bright wool palace. However, as you guys know, I like to stay up to date with what people say about Minecraft building, mostly so I can disregard it. But in this case, I've heard the advice that when you're building with lots of different colors, to avoid it being too colorful, you want to have lots of textures in there to make it look layered and deep. And so what we're actually going to do is take the colors of the rainbow, but specifically, we'll swap out the red wool for, red wood. We'll swap out the yellow wool for yellow glass. And we'll swap out the green for... That looks a lot like moss, right? And then the light blue kind of looks like a block I can imagine, ice maybe. So we're going to build the rainbow, but using those blocks. Well, obviously I mean after a night of sleep. But yeah, this is far too colorful, right? What if we could fix that? Well, what do you think? Does look much better this way, right? Instead of looking like a 2009 alpha Minecraft build, it looks like a monstrosity from 2019. But still, I actually do feel like this is then bad enough in its own way that I'm still interested in building it. If it looked a bit too good, if it looked like someone real and other than me might have built it, I think I'd have lost heart and not wanted to do it anymore. But as it stands, loving it. So let's now finish this all the way around. So it's a build and not just a wall. And now it's done, and isn't it beautiful? The answer is, of course, yes it is. I think that this is something delightful, and I even have the pitcher plant to show off where the cyan flower should be. I think maybe it's even worth putting like a cactus or something lime over here, just to mark the chest better, but we truly do have a space where each of the 16 dyes can be found, and a building for it to sit nicely in. A building which I think perfectly fulfills my aim. I mean, I do have to say something here, because as much as it is fun in games to have the rainbow inside of Minecraft, I think I do want to get one of my strongly held beliefs out there, one that isn't popular to say on the internet, but as fun as it is to have all these rainbows in Minecraft, I think if my son went to school and came home having spoken to other, people his own age, and decided that he was gonna try and be one of them, the people who just decide to watch build tutorials on the internet rather than being creative and having fun and building from their own heart, I think that I might have to disown him. Anyway, I'll leave that joke aside now, and I'll say that there is an important thing in what we do with the roof, because I've realized that by building these exactly 2 blocks apart, that means that there is an 8-block circle around each of the colors, and so if we want to incorporate all 16 colors, as opposed to just 7 into this, then the roof would be the perfect place to do this, and so I've brought 2 stacks of glass, which perfectly works out to 1 per die, and we're now going to build a roof. Well, we'll build the glass for the roof, and the rest can sit how it wants to, before working on our final goal. But yeah, let's get the dyes and make some glass. My nearest crafting table's all the way over there, which is horrendous, by the way. You know, I'm going to do something brave, though. I'm going to do something that I know many of you don't think I have the power to do. But instead of just making a brand new crafting table, I'm going to move this one closer. Because you never know when you're going to need to craft inside this place. And so here is my crafting table. Let's make some glass. Okay, so as rare as this is for me to say, I did in fact finish part 2. Look at that beautiful roof that I didn't need to build, but I think makes a nice addition anyway. And it was while building that roof that I realized that I made the embarrassing mistake of counting grey dye twice. And I thought, like, what could I possibly be missing? And that's when I realized I had a single allium, which I had left in a chest in the wrong place. But now, by bone milling these alliums, I can get my hands on some magenta. And so, yeah, this is what I can now do. Every single flower type, as well as the big flowers, I can use to make dyes, and I can use some of those dyes even to make dyed glass if I want to. But that still does leave me with the last big concern, which is getting my hands on enough dyes that if I do want, say, red dyes right now, or I do want orange dye tomorrow, I need a lot of orange dye currently, I want to be at the point where I'm not at the mercy of, like, well, I'd better... instead of having to be like, well, I'll sit here and bone mill until I have enough orange, instead I'd rather have a nice supply of each of the colors. And so how am I going to do that? My simple plan is this. I'm going to make a chest for each of these because I've already got chests for half of them here anyway. So why don't I just place chests for the other ones, but like above them in some way? So what if we place a block above this and then a chest above that? It can float in the air above everything else, and it should make it harder for me to accidentally break the block, which seemingly I just did anyway by accident. So there we go. That's a useful idea. And while we talk about, while we get the rest of these colors and indeed place down the last of these blocks, I want to, because this is kind of like brute force work, I want to talk about a hill to die on as a concept. Because, you know, the entire joke behind this building is that I'm dying on a hill. But if you've never heard the phrase of a hill to die on, it's something that is often attributed to, especially like arguments and discourse in general, because a lot of people have this concept of like, they're, you know, all of their beliefs mean nothing if you won't accept their one belief. You know, you've heard people like this all over the internet being like, well, you know, some people say we should just get along, but I say we shouldn't get along with people that are, insert very rude word for people I disagree with here. And if you come up with a strong enough argument for why people you disagree with are actually monsters, or, you know, like Hitler supporter, if you can come up with a strong enough reason, actually you are compellingly right. That is true. But the idea of the hill to die on is to say, look, I know it's very easy to say that if you don't accept all of my beliefs, then you can accept none of my beliefs. But actually, that's kind of not how the real world works, and it's not how we should aspire for the real world to work either. So let's just place a bunch of blocks below this one, and we'll leave the glass block there later so we can get a bunch of orange dye. Anyway, now let's start filling up the chests. But yeah, I feel like it's not how we should aspire for the world to work either. Like, it is not aspirational to say, yeah, I think that we should all... I guess we'll just store our excess dye in this chest until we later move it over. So I don't think it's aspirational to say that every one of your opinions is equally valuable as every other opinion, because to be totally honest, there are some opinions that just factually have to be less important than others. That is to say, I might think quite strongly about how people should, I don't know, get to work. You know, I think active travel is something that would really help people, because, you know what I think is crazy? The number of people who go out to the gym because they're like, yeah, I need to work out. That's really, really important. And then we'll go specifically get a mode of transport that makes their life very, very, you know, like immobile. But like, you know, like if you drive to work every day and then go to, you know, like a gym to stand on a treadmill for an hour and a half, it's like just walk to, or at least walk home from work. Maybe you could alternate walking to or from work. I don't know what the idea is there, but like the number of people where it's like, wait, you could take something you're already doing and turn it into something that's good for you, but it doesn't feel good because you're always going to be in a bit of a hurry, right? But that's why I think that it's really important for people to think about active travel, but actual, or you know, I don't think like active necessarily. I even just think like better for everyone else. The problem that cars have, like in my opinion, the reason why they stress me out so much is like because I'm like quite a considerate person. I feel like when you're in a car and you're in traffic, everyone thinks, oh, look at all these people around me. But I'm like, oh, all these people need to go places, and I'm just here going to Aldi. I'm just here, you know, going to the you know, pick up a friend or whatever. Like it makes me feel like a little bad when I'm like doing that, and so I feel like that is something that is, you know, like if I feel like it's something that is avoidable and definitely solvable. Also, it's so sad you can't bone meal these. But so even though I think it's important, and I've hopefully given you enough proof for you to believe that I'm not just saying I think it's important, I really do believe it's important. But despite me thinking it's important, I wouldn't say, if someone disagreed with me on that, and they said, no, Toy Cat, cars are the future. Cars are awesome. They let me decide to go wherever I want. If someone tries to take away my cards, I'm gonna take away them. I'm gonna break into their house in the middle of the night and sneak them away into a different country, is what you could say in response to that, and some people will, I'm sure. But, like, you know, the truth is that, like, even though for some people it's really important, more important than it is for me, and me believing that it's so important that I need to die on that hill isn't actually worthwhile. And so, I think that a hill like that in Minecraft, that I would not be willing to die on, would be the one about how it is that you should do basically anything. Because as I play enough Minecraft, I realize everything's fun sometimes. Every now and then I set up an auto farm and I'm like, oh, that was fun. And every now and then I do a farm and I'm like, that was awful. Building in Minecraft is something that I genuinely actually don't enjoy. During the process of making this, I procrastinated a bunch, and I couldn't work out why I was procrastinating so much. I'm in a very, like, good headspace with work right now. I've been enjoying a lot of what I've been up to, and usually the Let's Plays are my favorite videos to make. I love the talking parts of these, but at the same time, I just did not really love the building that was part of this, even though I made something that I think is unique. A part of me is like, oh, but what is even the point? As much as I can outwardly talk about the virtues of, like, oh yeah, well, you know, don't get in your own head about building, there are so many people out there who are so in their own head about building that they want to be in your head about building as well. How do I keep on breaking these blocks by accident? That is something worth fixing, that is for sure. So I have to go in here, and then I get myself trapped in here, and then I need to get myself out of here. Whoops. Okay, so we jump out like this. Nope, since we're down here anyway, let's pick up some of the excess blocks of dirt that are probably gonna confuse someone in the future, and let's grab them out anyway. And then let's grab myself out by using the dirt. There we go. Placing it on there, and oh my god, this is this is a multi-layered problem, it looks like. There we go. Okay, just hopefully that never happens again. But that's a good reminder about, like, oh, I just did something, and even though I just did it, there's a clear flaw that I've already spotted, which is that sometimes the blocks break and it's a pain to fix them. Now I know. There could be an easy fix of just like, well, if you have blue orchids sitting in the chest, but what if the easier fix was moving the chest up one block? Now I would know. Anyway, but yeah, I find building is something I sit there dreading. I'm like, I like designing the build, or like, I like having the idea for the build, and I like doing the physical building itself, but I hate the dumb admin work. Like, I hate, I had to dye a bunch of wool for this to work, so I had to go and farm the dye myself, which was, it's fun because it was part of what I was doing, but then I had to go and pick some wool from my sheep farm, and honestly, I didn't enjoy doing that a great deal. I thought that that was actually not fun, dare I say it. And so, yeah, I think that even though it's super fun what we've done in this one, I would also say, oh, I've got so many alliums. That's good. Even though I've had a really fun time in the aggregate today, I would say my actual hill to die on, my biggest is the fact that everyone should have dyes in Minecraft. But my real hill to die on in Minecraft is that it's a game everyone plays in their own way, and that ultimately, as much fun as we can poke about, you know, even my jokes about, like, oh yeah, building by just watching tutorials of other people who just watch tutorials from other people, instead of like, you know, like, even though I make jokes about that, I think ultimately what you do in Minecraft is up to you to enjoy, and that's the hill we should all die on. I think in a society, the hill we should all die on is that, you know, I may not agree with what you do, but I agree with your right to be free to do it. And the closer we can get to that, the happier we can all be. But, you know, what do I know? I'm just a guy who decided to die. And thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. We are edging closer to 7,500 days, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.